Hello everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into real-world IT, specifically focusing on network security for Windows administrators. We'll explore practical strategies and best practices to help you protect your network effectively. Over the next few minutes, we'll cover key concepts and real-world scenarios to keep your systems secure. Let's get started. Let's take a closer look at this diagram. It shows how traffic flows from the internet to various parts of our internal network, starting with the endpoint, then moving to internal servers, and finally reaching the domain controller. This flow highlights the typical path an attacker might take once they breach the perimeter. Now, the key message here is about shifting our mindset from relying solely on perimeter defenses. Instead, we need to apply zero-trust principles internally. That means not automatically trusting internal traffic just because it's inside our network. This slide is about internal network security controls, things we put in place inside our LAN to limit what an attacker can do if they get in. Why is this so important? Because most breaches don't stop at the initial access point. They often spread laterally across the network, causing much more damage. A common mistake many organizations make is trusting internal traffic by default, assuming that once you're inside, everything is safe. But the reality is, if one host gets infected, it can easily compromise servers and critical resources. Our goal with this approach is to reduce the blast radius, meaning, if a breach occurs, it's contained and doesn't spread uncontrollably. So, in summary, internal network security matters a lot because it helps us limit the damage and keep our systems safe, even if the perimeter is breached. It's about treating internal traffic with the same level of scrutiny as external traffic to stay one step ahead. Let's take a closer look at the diagram here. It shows how workstations, servers, and backup systems are all connected in a flat network. Notice the arrows pointing both ways. This indicates that all these systems can communicate freely with each other. Now, the key point here is about controlling that communication. The how-to or recommended commands emphasize the importance of identifying which assets are critical, and then restricting east-west traffic, that is, limiting the lateral movement between systems. Why is this important? Well, because when all systems can talk to each other openly, it creates a big vulnerability. Attackers love this kind of environment because it makes lateral movement, going from one compromised system to another, much easier. This can have a serious enterprise impact. It allows ransomware or other malware to spread rapidly across the network, causing widespread damage very quickly. You might hear some say, it's too hard to segment the network, but the reality is quite different. Host firewalls and proper segmentation can significantly reduce this risk. They help contain threats and prevent them from spreading unchecked. So the takeaway here is that flat networks are risky. They create opportunities for attackers, and implementing segmentation measures like host firewalls is a practical way to enhance your security posture. Let's take a look at this diagram to understand how inbound traffic is managed by the Windows firewall. By default, inbound connections are blocked, which is a good security practice. However, certain required services need to be allowed through, so we set rules to permit those specific traffic flows. Now, to manage these settings, there are simple commands you can use. For example, you can run getnet firewall profile to see the current firewall profile settings, and setnet firewall profile to enable or disable specific profiles, like the domain profile, as shown here. It's important to remember that a firewall isn't just for perimeter defense. It also provides critical host-level enforcement, which means each individual machine can control what inbound and outbound traffic is allowed. This is crucial because it limits attack paths, reducing the chances an attacker can exploit vulnerabilities from the inside or outside. A common failure we see is when the firewall gets disabled, leaving the host unprotected. To prevent that, organizations often enforce firewall settings through Group Policy Objects, or GPO, ensuring consistent security across all machines. Ultimately, Windows Firewall acts as a fundamental security control at the host level, helping us maintain a strong security posture by controlling traffic and reducing potential attack vectors. In this slide, we're looking at our inbound traffic strategy, which is crucial for maintaining a secure network environment. The diagram illustrates a simple flow: inbound traffic, which can either be blocked or allowed based on exceptions. When we talk about blocking, we're essentially telling the firewall to deny any inbound connections by default. However, we also have the flexibility to allow certain exceptions, like management ports, which are necessary for administrative access. The key here is the principle of a default deny inbound policy. This means that, unless explicitly permitted, all inbound traffic is blocked. This approach is effective because most systems don't need inbound access, so by default, we minimize potential attack vectors. Implementing this is straightforward with commands like setnet firewall profile default inbound action block. But beyond just blocking, we need to document which ports are allowed for specific purposes, creating an exception-based model. This helps us keep track of what's open and why, ensuring clarity and security. Overall, this strategy helps prevent worms and other malicious attacks from entering our systems, reinforcing the idea that a well-defined inbound traffic policy is a cornerstone of network security. Now, let's take a look at this diagram. It shows how traffic flows from the server to the internet, with a clear warning sign indicating suspicious traffic. This highlights the importance of monitoring outbound connections because that's often where data exfiltration happens. To manage this, one useful command is getnet firewall rule direction outbound, which allows us to review and understand our current outbound rules. Enabling logging is a crucial step here, as it helps us track and analyze outbound traffic patterns. Why focus on outbound traffic? Well, because if an attacker compromises a system, they might try to extract data secretly, which is known as data exfiltration. This can have serious enterprise impacts, like silent leaks of sensitive information that go unnoticed until it's too late. A common gap in many organizations is the lack of outbound rules. Often, the focus is only on inbound traffic, leaving outbound unmonitored. That's a mistake. The best approach is to start by monitoring outbound traffic first. Once you understand the normal behavior and identify any anomalies, you can then restrict critical systems to prevent unauthorized data from leaving. In summary, outbound traffic control is an essential part of your security posture. It helps you catch suspicious activity early and protect your organization from potential data breaches. Let's take a look at this diagram. On the client side, we have SMB, which stands for Server Message Block, a protocol used for sharing files and resources across the network. When a client connects to a file server, SMB is the communication channel. Now, to improve security, there are specific actions we can take. First, we can disable SMBv1 by running the command disable Windows optional feature online feature name, SMB1 protocol. This is crucial because SMBv1 is outdated and has known vulnerabilities. Next, we should enforce SMB signing via group policy. SMB signing helps ensure that data exchanged between clients and servers isn't tampered with, adding an important layer of security. It's important to understand why these steps matter. SMB has been heavily exploited by malware in the past, often used to move laterally within networks. This means that if an attacker gains access to one part of the network, they can use SMB to spread further, potentially leading to a compromised file server or other critical systems. By disabling SMBv1 and enforcing SMB signing, we're significantly reducing the attack surface. This is part of our broader SMB hardening strategy, making sure our environment is resilient against these common attack vectors. So, in summary, addressing SMB vulnerabilities helps prevent lateral movement and protects our enterprise from major impacts, like a full file server compromise. Let's take a look at this diagram. It shows that the admin subnet should primarily connect to servers, while other connections are blocked. The key here is to restrict RPC access to just those necessary connections, which we can do using firewall rules. Using management VLANs is also a crucial step. This helps isolate management traffic from other network traffic, reducing the risk of unauthorized access. Remember, RPC enables remote management, which is powerful but also a potential attack vector if not properly secured. That's why it really matters, to minimize the attack surface. If attackers can exploit RPC, they could gain control over critical systems. On an enterprise level, this could lead to admin abuse or privilege escalation, so tightening these controls is vital. You should restrict source IP addresses to only trusted sources and limit admin subnets to further reduce exposure. Finally, pay attention to RPC and management ports. They are often targeted. Properly securing these ports helps protect your environment from unwanted access and potential breaches. Let's take a closer look at the diagram illustrating OU-based segmentation. Essentially, this approach involves dividing your network into organizational units, or OUs, and then applying security policies based on whether the servers or users are within those OUs. When it comes to how-to or commands, the key is to apply firewall group policy objects, or GPOs, specific to each OU. This allows us to enforce segmentation without needing to install new firewalls. Instead, we leverage host-based rules, which are configured directly on the existing servers and endpoints. It's important to test these policies incrementally, making small, controlled changes first to ensure everything works smoothly before moving forward. This step-by-step approach helps prevent disruptions and confirms the effectiveness of the segmentation. One of the biggest advantages here is that you don't need new hardware to achieve segmentation. This makes the process faster and more cost-effective, delivering quick wins for your security posture. Using GPO targeting is critical. By precisely targeting the right OUs, you can protect your most valuable assets, or what we often call the crown jewels, first. Ultimately, this approach enables you to implement segmentation efficiently and effectively, safeguarding your network without the need for additional firewalls or complex infrastructure changes. All right, let's take a look at this diagram, which illustrates how we can control access to our domain controllers. As you can see, the goal here is to restrict workstation access, meaning only authorized workstations should be able to communicate with the DCs. The key point is that we should allow only the necessary DC ports, those essential for legitimate operation, and block all other access from workstations. Remember, DCs are the highest value targets in our environment because they hold the keys to our entire identity infrastructure. That's why full control over these controllers is critical. If an attacker gains access, the potential for total compromise is high, which can jeopardize the entire enterprise. To mitigate this risk, we need to restrict inbound access strictly to only what is required, and monitor activity aggressively to detect any suspicious behavior. In summary, protecting our domain controllers involves a combination of allowing only necessary communication, blocking everything else, and maintaining vigilant monitoring to ensure they stay secure. This approach aligns with our overall goal of ensuring a resilient and secure environment. Let's take a look at this diagram illustrating the flow of production and backup networks. As you can see, the backup network is isolated from the main production environment, which is crucial for security. We've marked it with a no-entry symbol to emphasize that there should be limited access to this backup network. Now, why is this important? Well, backups are often targeted by ransomware attackers because they want to delete your ability to recover data. That's why we need to implement specific measures, like separating credentials, so that only authorized personnel can access these backups. It's also vital to remember that backups are a common attack target, so isolating these networks helps protect them from malicious activities. If attackers manage to delete or corrupt backups, the enterprise could face severe consequences, including the inability to recover critical data. To prevent this, we should isolate the backup networks completely and restrict administrative access strictly to essential personnel. This way, even if the main network is compromised, your backups remain safe and accessible for recovery. In summary, backup network isolation is a key strategy in strengthening your overall cybersecurity posture, ensuring that your backups are protected and available when you need them most. Let's take a look at this diagram that compares normal traffic with suspicious traffic. The goal here is to understand how to recognize and distinguish between the two. On the right, we have the how-to commands and methods to monitor network activity. One key command is getNet TCP connection, which allows us to see active TCP connections on our network. Monitoring unusual ports is critical because these can often be signs of suspicious activity. For example, if a device suddenly starts communicating over a port that's not typical for normal operations, that could be a red flag. Why do we do this? Because detecting abnormal traffic early helps us prevent potential security incidents. The earlier we identify something suspicious, the better our chances of containing and mitigating any threats. In an enterprise environment, this kind of early detection can make a significant difference. It helps us maintain the integrity of our network and protect sensitive data. Tools like Netstat and PowerShell are invaluable for this purpose. They give us the ability to baseline what normal behavior looks like, so we can quickly spot deviations. When we see something out of the ordinary, we can set up alerts to notify us immediately. Ultimately, network monitoring for administrators is about staying vigilant. It's about knowing what normal looks like and being alert to anything that strays from that norm. This proactive approach is essential for maintaining a secure and resilient network environment. Let's take a look at this flow diagram. It starts with firewall logs, which are crucial for monitoring network activity. These logs are then sent to a SIEM system, where we can analyze and correlate the data. To enable this process, you can set the firewall to log allowed connections using the command setNet firewall profile log allowed true. It's important to review these logs regularly because they serve as forensic evidence in case of an incident. By analyzing the logs, we can better understand attack paths and how threats are moving through our network. This understanding helps us respond faster, minimizing potential damage. To make the most of this, we should enable firewall logging and ensure logs are centralized for easier access and management. Overall, logging and visibility are key components of a strong security posture, giving us the insights needed to detect and respond to threats effectively. All right, let's take a closer look at this diagram. It shows how misconfigurations can lead to a chain reaction. First, a misconfiguration occurs, then an attacker can exploit it, which ultimately results in a breach. This flow emphasizes how critical proper configuration is to maintaining security. Now, moving on to the how-to, or commands, the first step is to audit your firewall rules. You want to identify any rules that are outdated or unnecessary. Removing unused rules is essential because every extra rule can be a potential entry point for attackers. Next, ensure that your firewall profiles aren't disabled unintentionally. Disabled profiles can create gaps in your security posture. Also, watch out for having too many allow rules, which can inadvertently open up your network to unwanted traffic. Another common misconfiguration is not monitoring outbound traffic. Without outbound monitoring, you might miss signs of malicious activity happening from within your network. Unrestricted admin access is another big risk. Limiting admin privileges and monitoring admin activities can significantly reduce the chance of an insider threat or an attacker gaining control. Finally, proper documentation of your network configurations is vital. Without documentation, it's easy to forget or overlook critical security settings, leading to vulnerabilities. So the key takeaway here is that these common misconfigurations are often overlooked, but can be easily addressed with regular audits and careful management. That's how we strengthen our defenses and reduce the risk of exploitation. Let's take a closer look at this flow diagram, which highlights the key steps in incident response from a network perspective. When an incident occurs, the first critical action is network isolation. This step is essential to contain the threat quickly and prevent it from spreading further. To achieve this, you can disable rules dynamically, which allows for rapid response without waiting for lengthy manual updates. Containing the incident swiftly is crucial because it gives your team the time needed to assess the situation and implement more comprehensive measures. Network controls play a vital role here. They slow down attackers by limiting their movement and access, buying valuable time for your response efforts. The overarching goal of these actions is to minimize the impact and reduce the spread within your enterprise. Isolating affected segments and blocking suspicious traffic are practical steps that help contain the breach effectively. By doing so, you're not only stopping the attack in its tracks, but also maintaining the integrity of the rest of your network. Remember, quick response is key. The sooner you act, the less damage your organization might face. This approach underscores the importance of having a solid incident response plan tailored to the network perspective, ensuring that your defenses are proactive and adaptive in the face of threats. Let's take a closer look at the checklist for reducing risk. Following these steps is crucial to strengthening our security posture. First, it's important to review these measures quarterly to ensure we're up to date with any new threats or vulnerabilities. Next, updating rules regularly helps adapt our defenses to evolving attack methods. Enabling the firewall everywhere is a fundamental step. It's our frontline barrier against unauthorized access. Setting inbound rules to default, deny, helps minimize potential entry points for attackers. Hardening SMB and RPC protocols is also vital, as these are common targets for exploitation. Protecting our domain controllers and backups ensures that critical assets are resilient against attacks. Continuous monitoring is key. By keeping a close eye on activity, we can detect and respond to threats promptly. This hardening checklist ties back to our overall goal of creating a robust, secure environment, because a layered, proactive approach is our best defense against cyber threats.